Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure I can tell you what the date is, but my encoder does not want to stay together. Ha! Now it's staying together. It's Thursday, November 3rd, and it is our year of 2011, and this is Day 9 Daily number 371, where we have some fun while learning to be a better gamer. In exciting news, my manlyhood has been absolutely ravished in the last couple of days, where we got to see some, ravaged, I guess is what I wanted to say. Whatever, it's fine, it's been ravished in the last couple of days. As I've been playing Amnesia the Dark Descent, which is good. The next scheduled playthrough continues next week, around Monday times. So make sure you guys get ready, because after Fun Day Monday, I'm going to be shitting my pants even more. And I am going to be playing Amnesia from start to finish. There will be no sissying out. I will endure my shame the whole way through. Hip hip hooray. This is the largest mug that I think is in the entire house. It is about proportional to about most of my head, and actually has a photo of my roommate on it. I love that. Hey Asher, I did pay rent this week. I'm really proud of myself. And in this delicious mug is tea. Delicious Yorkshire tea. In yesterday's daily, we took a look at a fellow named Arya, an unknown Zerg player of paramount skill. Made some pretty giganto blunders and ended up losing himself the game, which made us all very sad. In today's daily, we're going to take a look at Sase's PvT style, which gets me so unbelievably excited because he uses the warp prism. And there's a couple of things about it that get me pumped. One, he's using the warp prism, which is just cool in its own right. Two, the thing that makes it exciting for me play-wise is anything that has some attacking in it feels really, really fun to use. Any build that has you getting a bunch of Mutalisks and doing harassment, or getting a Banshee and doing harassment, or doing drops with a medivac, or in this case using the warp prism, it makes the gaming really exciting. Really, really, really exciting. And the third reason I was thinking of was it's not just the warp prisms that are going to make Sase's play cool. It's going to be the transitions that he does around the warp prism. Most of all, I had those three reasons, but the one reason that just makes me flex with excitement is the fact that this is the Protoss versus Terran matchup, which is widely considered right now to be the hardest matchup in the game. Terrans have a pretty straightforward path to go along. Marines and Marauders and Medivacs and Vikings and eventually Ghosts. And that composition becomes wickedly difficult to deal with in the endgame because the Ghosts are so good with the EMP. But what we see Sase doing is not only putting pressure back on the Terran, but setting himself up in a good position to end up sort of crushing in the later game stages. Bing! We really like that quite a lot. So, it's so good. What's on the agenda for today is we're going to be looking at 4 games of Sase. 4 frickin' games. The first game that we're going to look at in part 1 is the basic overall look at the opening. We're not going to finish the game, though. We are not going to be finishing up the game between Sase and Bomber. In part 2, we're going to be looking at 2 games from Sase where we get to see variations on this drop-based play, where it worked out really well, and the sort of cool stuff we can do with it. And then in part 3, we're going to watch that 4th game where we see Sase losing when he does his usual transitions, and we're going to talk about why. So that way you get to see all the variety of the Warp Prism play, wrapping it up with none other than pitfalls to avoid. My god, it's almost as though I prepared for this daily. Holy frickin' organization, Batman. I'm actually going to go to the Sase cam, and we're going to watch just him for the start of the day. Excellent. Please, please, please. Please, please, please. Drinking some delicious liquid. So let's talk about all the usual things that we do in the daily. First, we turn the sound on, and then we talk about the build order that he's going to do. I don't know if I will ever turn the sound on. I would actually say that the more often my sound is off, the better prepared I am for the daily, because I only turn sound off when blasting music in preparation. So look at that. Look at me turning a potential flaw into a demonstration of responsibility and care. So we have Sase spawning here. It's on Antigua Shipyard. I'm not going to worry so much about the shape of the maps that we're up against. A lot of times people will overly read into that. A lot of times people will correctly read into that. What we are going to do is just ignore this and just focus on the overall aspects of big distances between the bases, and there are some angles for warp prisms to come in. So what Sase is going to see right off the bat is no gas. Good stuff. Excellent. Now, in the early game, there are some immediate decisions that we need to talk about. This we don't need to talk about so much. Everybody frickin' in the universe gets the cybernetics core up. We have this warp gate going down, and there's the nexus. Alright, cool. And in particular, we're going to see the stalker come up. Excellent. Okay, so everything we're seeing right now out of Sase makes a ton of sense. He is doing this little cute pylon shenaniganry. That's good. He has seen his opponent has absolutely no gas geysers. So we can kind of read into the fact that he's going to be going for this early expansion command center. Now what I want to do is I want to do make-believe, and I want to fast forward a little ways into the game. I'm actually going to speed it up while I'm off monitor, so that way we can get to a general look that we will almost always see in this matchup. I'm going to be coming back to the game, and it looks like right now. Here we go. Here is a look, a basic overall look that I want you to just kind of be aware of. We have an expansion up. We have 2 gateways and a robo. Actually, I probably should have waited until this was the case. Yeah. We have 2 gateways, a robo, an expansion, and most importantly, we have a lot of sentries, right? I mean, we also have the stalker here, but we don't really have anything except a lot of sentries to help defend us. Why did I fast forward to this look? The reasoning is that Bomber could have early expanded. Bomber could have gone for some sort of crazy fast barracks push. He could have done a very standard 2 barracks push. There's a big variety of ways that we could have opened. The important thing is that we end up here. If for some reason our opponent was going 2 barracks, we might get these 2 warp gates first, and then get our robotics facility, and then wrapping it all up, we would get the nexus. In this particular game, what did we end up seeing? Well, Sase sees no gas and realizes, oh, cool, I can get away with expanding a little bit early. This is this whole notion of rearrangement that is the core idea with the strongest of plays. Sase, we can just think of 2 different examples. We can think of, is my opponent getting a bunch of units early? Is my opponent early expanding? If he gets a bunch of units early, I'm going to get a bunch of units early, and then I'll expand. If he's expanding early, I'm going to expand early myself. No matter what we do, we're still going to collapse back to the same point in gameplay. So now that we have established that mid-game look, we can start talking about some of the decisions that we're going to make leading up to this. We see that he has early expanded and has no gas. Harassment with a stalker should be really strong because there's no way that our opponent can possibly have marauders with slow. So look at that, chrono boosting out 2 stalkers to do the harassment. Yeah, we're also checking around to do a little bit of SCV management. But the important thing is that we saw the early expand so we can get these 2 stalkers up. Cool. However, Sase, no matter what, will be getting this second assimilator quite quickly. The reason I'm spending such a long time talking about this various rearrangement stuff is that we're going to be watching 4 different games today, and I want this concept of rearrangement in your head, because Sase is going to be doing effectively the same thing 4 times in a row, but it's going to look a little different every time, and we want to be able to establish why right off the bat. If our opponent was coming up with some scary push, we'd probably want to get these sentries up earlier. Now, typically the reason that we get these sentries up is because we need to have force fields available to cut all his units apart. Sase also getting very early gas stuff. And yep, our stalkers, look at this, took absolutely no life damage, only shields, so that way We can continue to control. This stalker would really not be here with a lot of other builds. Specifically because our opponent early expanded, we can get away with doing this sort of thing safely. Now here's a little stroke of brilliance that we're going to see coming out of Sase. Yep, he's going to go ahead and get his warp gates up. What does he warp in? Well, I can just tell you it's going to be a bunch of sentries. There we see the sentries continuing to pop out. We see the robo continuing to pop out. The reason that we have this force is to deal with any early push that comes. But now we are finally back. Boom! This is this convergence point I talked about a little bit beforehand. Where to go from here? With this mixture, what players traditionally go for is Colossus. Colossus takes a really damn long time. It's about a minute to be able to get the Robo Bay up. It's about a minute to get your first Colossus out. And it's way longer than that for your range to finish and for you to get a reasonable amount of Colossi. So now we're just like in this defense mode. And this is, I think, the biggest danger zone for every Protoss player. The Protoss is defended at the front. When they start getting Colossus, maybe they can hold off some drop harass. But during that period of time, Terran has complete and total freedom. No matter what Terran wants to do, he's allowed to do. Watch the way that we're going to see Sase combat this. He does this brilliantly. Anytime you have units that are there for offense, or excuse me, the units that are there for defense, think of a way to start attacking with them. The most obvious example of the unit you cannot attack with is a cannon. If you build a cannon right at the front and your opponent attacks, you go, yes, this cannon was useful. But if you build a cannon and he doesn't attack, ugh, that sucks. Anytime you're building these sentries and he attacks, you think, oh my god, I'm in great shape. Oxlov is a player who just delights whenever a bunch of Marine Marauder come at him early because he can slice it with the force fields. But if there's no attack coming, what do? Well, Sase is going to do this very clever, mostly sentry drop. Mostly sentry drop. Now watch what happens back at home. We see a forge coming up. He actually should have built the support bay. He accidentally whiffed there a little bit. We'll come back to that in a moment. There's the support bay. The fact that he's building both of these really surprised me the first couple of games when I watched them. The reason this surprises me is Forge doesn't help me right now. Helps me with upgrades, will help my army later. Robotics Bay does not help me right now. It will help me once I have enough Colossi and I have range later. What on earth could justify this big, like this double sacrifice of strength right now? Well, it's this drop play that he's doing. Notice he had spotting at the front. He's setting himself up quite nicely around that backside. And here is the play that has made Sase really, really famous with this Warp Prism play. He just locks everything in. Again, he whiffed it a little bit. He probably should have been able to throw down another force field. We see all the Marines pulling back, and he can even force field to be able to save himself. And then he safely departs without anything going wrong. Now, what makes this awesome as hell is that what if my opponent was moving out in the middle of the map? When I throw down this Warp Prism, I can make a snap judgment and say, yeah, you know what, I should actually be warping in more units in this attack. A lot of times when Sase does this play, we'll see just a couple of Marines, and Sase will go, oh, fantastic. Warp in more units and really crush hard back in the main base. Sase's being quite bold with this. And in the meantime, look at this. He's adding on more gateways. He's getting the upgrade. He's going to be able to begin getting more Colossus soon. He's in unbelievable shape. And look at this. Another really bold move. In the unit station, I mean, look at what we have at the front of our base. We have 4 zealots, 2 sentries, and yeah, hell, that's it, man. Anytime we see, with this observer, units coming out the back, we walk into the back of his base, and then we can do a full set of warp-ins with all these gateways and use the sentries at the front to buy ourselves a little bit of time. Yeah, we might have to cancel this Nexus, but we are going to rock his main hard. And the important thing is that this one robotics facility that we want to get the Colossus up with, and all these sentries that we use to defend, we combine these together to do sentry warp prism drops to give us a lot of control. And it was just maybe 2 or 3 minutes of harassing, and if we come and look at the mini-map, Bomber is kind of far pulled back. He has those usual upgrades, but yeah, he has to get the missile turret up. This is a good position for the Protoss to be in. He has kept the Terran pinned back with plenty of time to get up all these kinds of essentials. And as I speed things along, notice how many upgrades Sase is getting. Normally, you'd probably want to have more gateways by now for fear of a big push. We have him pinned a little bit strongly right now, so we can just rely on our Colossus and our upgrades and doing things like getting up charge for the Zealots. And this is all good in the hood. More spotting action, more spotting action. Where did that warp prism go? Do we still have it alive? Yeah, it's somewhere around here. Yep, there it is. And I think it's at this point in the game that I don't really have that much else to say about the introduction. Pretty cool, crisp, simple stuff. Now, I'm going to answer a question that I have been asked before with this play. Actually, at an MLG, I was just burbling on to someone because it's kind of funny. In between, when I'm not casting the games, I actually just run out and go to the feature station booth and just like watch. And I was just, oh god, Sase's so good. And I was just like, god, look at that drop play. That warp prism is going to force the Terran player to pull the units from the front of his base back to the back. And one of the immediate questions someone said is, well, what if the Terran just leaves all his Marines at the back of the base? Doesn't that completely negate the effectiveness of that kind of drop? And the answer is, okay, yeah, then the drop doesn't do direct damage, but all this stuff that Sase's doing, in particular this move to get both of these structures up around the 8-minute mark, I guess around the 9-minute mark because he whiffed it. This move to get these two up is still totally safe. It's a completely safe maneuver. If your Terran defends too much, you're in amazing shape. Your Terran also is almost obligated to keep the majority of units at the front of his base because of this vision. Look at the way Bomber's vision is set up. He has no vision outside the front of his base. You know why that is? Remember right at the start of the game, this stalker we built? There's really nothing that Bomber can do about that. Sure, he can move down the bottom of his ramp and try to push it away, but this little stalker is shutting down all the knowledge that Bomber has. Bomber did hide an expo this game, completely irrelevant. Right now, Bomber just basically has to sit and sit and sit and wait patiently. Has to rally his stuff to the front. At any point in time, a 5-gate push could come up the front. He has absolutely no knowledge of that. So, of course, when this drop ends up coming in about 20 seconds here, Bomber suddenly goes, ah, crap, and you're almost guaranteed a couple of kills back here. Okay, so the second follow-up question people will always ask. They say, okay, I understand this logic. Terran has to keep the units at the front of his base because if a 5-gate comes, he needs to be prepared. So he should have the back of his base open. But what if your Terran, again, just straight up blind guesses? He straight up blind guesses that you're going to be going Warp Prism. He prepares for that push at the back, and then you don't do any damage at all. Another really significant thing to note is that Sase could always just do a huge shove at the front. And if you're not prepared enough at the front, or Sase could build the Warp Prism, move it to the back of your base, see that everything is there, and then do an attack at the front. I'm not even talking this 5-6 gate thing, that your opponent misguessed. I'm talking literally Sase sees the situation, recognizes that there's weakness at the front, and goes ahead and attacks that. That's the first thing that we're going to step into when we go into part 2, where we watch some variations on this Warp Prism harass. The important things to note: very cool play, simple play, fills a big defensive problem, and there's a lot of cool tactics we can do. See you in part 2 in about 2 minutes.